Hi everybody, Eve Everett here, and this time around we're going to talk about what's sold on eBay. The scavenged, the dirty, the broken, the water damaged, and we're also going to talk about Fire King, antiques, and easy to make sales. So how have all of you been doing? I know it's been a long time. I've just had a lot going on and just couldn't get to it. Anyway, a couple minor points of interest. Sometimes when I need to change my state of mind, when I feel myself getting stale, I head on over to Reddit and look at all or mildly vandalized, anything to change my emotional state from unproductive to just bringing it up a little bit. It can get very lonely when you're a eBay seller. There's not a lot of person-to-person contact in terms of at least a professional community, I think anyway. And sometimes it just helps to kind of do that. Anyway, aside from that, I have been on a diet which, believe me, has not helped my state of mind. I've lost 15 pounds so far. I'd like to lose about 15 more, only because when I was in college I was like a size 6, and I think realistically if I'm going to maintain my health as best as I can, I think it's important that I get back to being a size 6. So I'm on my way there, probably about another 10-15 pounds and I'll hit it. I think as one ages, it's important to kind of not take that stuff for granted, because as you age it just gets harder to lose weight, and your metabolism slows down and so forth and so on. So that is the way it is. While all this has been going on, I have become the spill queen. I mean, this last couple weeks, anything that is in my hands that has a beverage has spilled for some reason. So it's been a crazy week. I even had one of those blender incidents where your blender blows up and explodes all over you and the kitchen and everything else. So let's hope I'm out of that run of bad luck. Anyway, this time around, like I said, we're going to talk about scavenging and using that art form of scavenging to come up with items that are going to be profitable for you. And there may be items that other people leave behind because they simply don't want to be bothered with damage to the item. In reality, it's a great place for people to get into, especially once they develop an eye for what's going to move regardless of the shape it's in. Alright, so this is a series of items that are fairly damaged. Many people pass over damaged items. I suggest that you learn what is salvageable for resale and what is not, particularly when it comes to certain types of antiques such as clothing and embroideries and remnants. You can still be quite profitable with pieces that other people would not bother with because they just think it's too much of a hassle. A lot of these items are used for study by designers or for inspiration to be repurposed into other products. So, for example, I sell to some major designers in New York City. Basically, that's literally all they do. They don't care if it's stained or has holes in it. What they're interested in is the embroidery and the design and the style, because they may take the trim, have it remade in China and put it on thousands of dresses or blouses, things like that. So keep that in mind. In this case, this is a very damaged pair of antique Chinese embroidered high heels. Someone likely took a embroidery and basically pasted it onto the structure of the shoe, probably sometime in the mid-20s through the mid-40s. And these were museum deaccessioned. However, they're dirty and they are very damaged. And here you can see more of the shattering on the side of the shoe. And again, I bought these in a lot of several other pairs of old high heels. Paid about $30 for the lot. They were all damaged to some extent. However, I still did quite well on the lot, as you will see. And again, this pair alone I sold for $69.99. They went to the Netherlands, so that person paid shipping. and it took me about a month and a half to sell these. This also gets a vote for crappiest picture of the year. My photography here is less than stellar. Some of my pictures came out really dark, and I just was too lazy to fix them, as sad as that sounds. These were a pair of gold leather heels. They were very narrow, and I thought that it would be difficult to find an audience for them. I posted these for $39.99 and took a best offer of $31, and they sold in under 3 weeks. And here's another pair of shoes from the same lot, and again, not so stellar pictures. They were damaged. They had this huge, clumsy red bow on them, on each shoe. But all in all, they still sold relatively fast. These went to Germany for $39.99. Here we have a miniature oil lamp called a perfect time indicating Grand Vals oil lamp. And these are pretty popular on eBay. If you take a look, you'll see that they can go anywhere between 50 up to 150 plus, especially if it has this shade. As you can see here, mine does not have the top shade that would go over top of the lit candle or flame or whatever the heck you want to call it. And just so you know, they say this is kind of like the equivalent of a Victorian timekeeper. I guess if you didn't want to use your pocket watch, this was the next best thing. You'd fill it to, much like you put cups or ounces into a measuring cup, and you'd fill it to the amount of time that you wanted to use it. When it burned out, that meant that your time was done. So, like I said, they do quite well. Mine is dirty. The wick inside would not move, and I ended up selling this in under a month for $37 plus the shipping. And by the way, for the most part, when I'm talking about the sales price of something, of course these people are paying shipping. I used to do a free shipping model, but the shipping costs have just gone up so much, and I haven't seen a significant benefit in terms of best match or anything of that nature. So I'm back to using a shipping model. It's very humble. I don't charge much for shipping at all, actually, and that will probably change as well. But I haven't noticed any change in terms of customers complaining about that or my rate of sales. So just so you know, for future reference, I'm not including shipping in what the sales price is, but they are charged the appropriate amount of shipping. Next to look at is this Secret Life of Jesus. I'd call it a book, but it's more like a 1950s collated printout. I don't know if it's officially a book, although there is a publisher on it. As you can see, it's pretty messed up. It's got stains on the cover, it's tattered. And here you can see it's got some red stains on some of the back pages. And even though it was wrecked, I disclosed the damage, and I was because it's a volume 2 of some sort of Rosicrucian book that's relatively hard to find. I was able to get $39.99 for it, and it took me a little while to move. It looks like it took me about a little under 3 months, and I shipped that to Chicago, Illinois. Although it's not always the case with children's transferware or vintage and antique glassware, porcelain in general, there are some exceptions to just going by the cracked and damaged items there. In this case, I had an antique Robinson Crusoe child's tea set that was transferware. Probably dates to the late 1800s, possibly early. I had a lot of damage to the pieces. One of the serving dish there on the right was missing part of the handle. I think the creamer had a large crack in it, and the lid to the sugar had a big crack in it too. I think the picture might have even been missing a little bit of a piece. In any event, I was also selling separately the dishes and cups that were in decent shape. So one person bought both lots of this transferware. They bought the tea set you see here for I posted it at $59.50, and I ended up getting a best offer for $52, and I took that. And here is the rest of that set. This had 7 saucers, 2 with flea bite chips, and came with 2 cups. And I took $52 for that as well. I posted that in the beginning of January, and it took me about 3 weeks to move that, and that went to Glendive, Montana. If you take a look at transferware, like children's transferware, it's all over the map. Some of the artwork on this set was particularly appealing, and in the past it had done very well, so I was satisfied with the price that I got, and I was able to ship it all to one person, so I think that worked out pretty conveniently. Alright, so here we have a area rug by Shaw Rugs. It has a kitten and cat floral theme to it. This ran about 3 feet 3 inches by 4 feet 8 inches, and when I saw it, it was very dirty and strangely had cat hair all over it. I mean, what a surprise, right? You know, I was a little reluctant to buy it, but I hemmed and hawed. I know that when you can find something that has a specific theme to it, it's definitely worth considering. I posted it, I did end up getting it. I posted it for $89.99 and sold it for $67 and shipped that to Indiana. It took me about 3 weeks to move that. So, and before I packed it, I had to clean the daylights out of it because although I had gotten the lint off it before I pictured it, I had it had a few stains that I didn't quite see, and you know, I'm a little retentive about that sort of stuff, so I spent some time on it. So ultimately, was it worth my time in the $67 that I got for it? Yeah, I think so. I would do it again, but it was a little annoying. Here we have a antique American La France fire apparatus manual book. It's basically a manual on how to use their fire equipment, and La France put out a lot of stuff like this in its heyday. So there's a lot of manuals, there's instruction booklets, you name it. If you go on eBay and look, you'll see the prices all over the place. But I got this one at the Weigh and Go and forgot about it. When I went to go research it, I couldn't find a single one on the internet. It's a 4th edition, which is very interesting because usually the higher the edition, with the exclusion of textbooks, I'm talking about antiquarian books. It's, to me, unusual to see something do as well as this did. I couldn't find anything on Bookfinder, and Bookfinder.com pretty much has any book out there worth finding. So I posted this for $124.99 and ended up selling that within 2 weeks and shipped that to Texas. And here you can see it's got some foldable diagrams and graphs of their equipment. Very cool book. And hopefully I find more of this stuff in the future. Just really depends on my mood. Sometimes I go into a thrift shop and I'm in antique painting mode or antique print mode or fabric mode, you know what I mean? Like I'm going in there and thinking of certain things, and actually this one was kind of an afterthought as well, but I definitely think I need to rethink that a little bit, huh? $124.99, not bad. Here we have first in a series of antique African inlaid mother of pearl wooden combs that were sold. I picked these up at a museum deaccessioning auction, and it was one of these oddities where the auction owner's daughter was vacationing in Alaska, and in Alaska there's a rather large museum dedicated just to combs, like all sorts of combs, antique combs, modern combs, ethnic combs, you name it. She was able to talk to the owner of the museum who was retiring and convince that person to send several hundred combs to auction in my neck of the woods, way down in the States. And I went to that auction. Some of the prices were very steep. Fortunately, I was really in it only for some of the ethnic antique combs, and I picked up a whole bunch of them, and this is part of that lot. These were probably from Central Africa, from the very late 1900s to maybe late 1800s. In any event, these are wooden combs that ran about 7.5 inches tall. You know, nothing huge. Just, you know, they would have been worn for a ceremony or some sort of ornamental comb. In any event, I sold these for $44.99, and they went to a collector in California. I had these for quite a while. I'm finally getting around to listing them. These are fairly plentiful, so generally what people do is they will collect them in groupings and display them. So hopefully this person will be happy with what they got. So it took me about, actually it took me 11 days to move these, so that worked out pretty well, and I have several more sets to show you. I might do that next time now. Here is another African comb. This figural comb has a lot of etching in it that unfortunately I can't show you at this time. In any event, it was about 10.5 tall, and I sold this to a nice person in Australia who, strangely enough, actually knew the owners of the museum that I was just telling you about, and he was asking me if I thought that they might sell more combs off by auction in the future, and I don't know, it was a while ago. So anyway, I put this up for $42, but took a best offer of $30, which I guess, I don't know why I did that, but I did. So I shipped that to Australia, and that took me a little over a month and a week to sell. Here we have a really cool example of advertising spatterware. This is Bacon's Guernsey Milk spatterware advertising picture. Ran about 4.5 inches tall. Really neat work done on this between the ridging and the font on the advertising and just the spatter work in general. It did have a chip on the rim that must have occurred a long time ago. It wasn't a recent chip, and it had weathered with age. I posted this in the... It took me about... let me see here. Sorry about that. It took me a little under 2 months to sell that. I did some research on comparables and priced it at $69.99. I ended up taking a best offer for $60 and shipped that to Little Canada in Minnesota. It's a cool name for a town. I attended an auction last year where I picked up a ton of antique sewing items, pin cushions and the like, and this antique ribbon. This is antique French blue polka dot ribbon, rayon blend, on the original roll. About 10 yards worth, and you know, I had to get out the calculations and try to figure out the length of it. I didn't want to roll it all out because, as you can see there, back in the day they rolled the ribbon, some of their ribbons, on paper. So I ended up having to, you know, use my brain and the mathematical formula for figuring out how much yardage is on a bolt, and I'm pretty sure I got it right. I ended up selling this for $49.99, and that took me 5 days to sell, so clearly I botched the price on that. But they're very happy with their purchase, and I was happy to see it go. And I had several other bolts of ribbon. Is it bolts of ribbon? That doesn't sound right. Anyway, I had some more ribbon trim rolls that I did sell along with that to different people around the same time, so it worked out pretty well. Alright, so here's one of the sets of 4 that I had of these Amway Kickstarter marketing CDs for people that become marketers or salespeople for Amway. Don't use the Amway name if you come across these. You're better off with Kickstarter, which is Q-U-I-X-T-A-R. I have 4 lots of these, and if you look at the comparables, it can be a little discouraging. Some of the lots go really cheap, some of them go fairly decent. I kind of picked in the middle range, hoping that I might be able to unload them quickly, because I was a little, leery of the fact that I might get varroed. So I ended up putting up 4 different sets for $29.99 a pop, and in about 2 days I sold these to a company in Texas that actually resells these to Amway salespeople. So go figure. But they bought them all, so all the lots, for $29.99 a pop, so that made my day. And speaking of fast sales, life is not complete without a vintage Windmere curly top diffuser dryer. And I got this and literally sold it in under a day for $39.99. So if you see, I got this at the Weigh and Go. I tested it, it worked fine. So if you see them floating around, check them out, because obviously they can sell pretty quickly. I probably underpriced mine. So anyway, $39.99 in one day, not too shabby. This is a map of Philadelphia silk tie by a company called Civitas, I guess. Civitas. I think that's Latin, right? Anyway, it's a 2007 tie, and I posted this and sold it in under a month for $24.99. And of course, the guy didn't. He was Italian, and somehow he ordered it through eBay.it, the Italian eBay. So every time he sent me a question about it, I somehow ended up in eBay Italy, even though he had it mailed to Jamaica, New York. I don't know. Very strange. But he was quite happy. It's just I didn't understand a word he was saying. I had to translate everything, which was fine. Thank goodness for Google Translate, right? I have sold several Trump items in the last year or so, and this one was no exception. I posted it and sold it in 3 days for $24.99. Alright, so let's talk about Fire King and jadeite, which is fairly popular on eBay. Here we have a set of a sugar and a creamer. The sugar has the lid, both in pretty good shape. I didn't have any chips. However, at the time I put them up, they were going for $35, but I figured I'd wait and try to get a better price. So I posted mine up at $45, and I caved in under a month and accepted $30 plus shipping for it. I probably should have waited, but I don't know. If you look at the prices, you'll see what I mean. They're a little weak on this. Actually, the pattern's Jane Ray, and the Jane Ray pattern actually does pretty well, but for some reason, I guess the creamer and sugar is relatively easy to find. But I still came out ahead. I actually squoze out about a $22 profit off that, so I'll take it. Alright, so here we have some more Fire King in the Jane Ray pattern. The keywords I use for this is Fire King, Jane Ray, and jadeite. I had 13 cups and saucers, plus I think I had one extra. And when I put these all out, I didn't inspect them as well as I should have, because as I was packing these to be shipped, I'm like, oh no. Several of them, like more than just the acceptable get away with view, I'm talking several of them had scratches on the outside of the cup that for some reason I missed. I had started these at the price of $1.99. While I was waiting for these things to sell, I broke one of the cups like an idiot. I ended up having to revise the ad, and I accepted $105 plus shipping for these. And it took me under 2 months to sell. Ended up shipping them all the way out to California. It was a bit of a hassle. I'm not really a big fan of packing like a whole bunch of glassware at one time, but I made it happen, and ultimately ended up making about $63 off that. It was a pain in the butt, but I'm not going to pass up Fire King Jane Ray, and the buyer was quite happy with them, much to my relief. Here we have a Fire King jadeite batter bowl with spout. And if you take a look at the comparables, they do okay. This one was about 7.5 inches across by 4 inches tall. It was in nice shape. And I posted it for $32.99 and ended up accepting $25 for it. And that moved in under 3 weeks. So keep your eyes open for jadeite and Fire King. Sometimes Fire King is marked and sometimes it is not. McKee was another popular maker of jadeite, and that's why sometimes you'll just see jadeite or McKee. They also made a lot of this really cool mid-century greenware, I guess you could call it. Just a really cool color. In any event, some of the Fire King mugs, if they are the right shape, go for a heck of a lot of money. So if you have the time, kind of teach yourself a little bit about jadeite and Fire King. You won't be sorry, and hopefully you run into it from time to time. All right, well, I think I'm going to close it up for now with this really ridiculous silver hat. It was I would call this like a derby hat. Was over 17 inches wide with this fanned silver lame. Really over the top. Normally, I really should avoid these hats because they can be a real pain to pack, especially if you have a very finicky buyer. This is a brand called Decor Fashions. Had some wear on the inside of it, but the outside just looked way over the top, like I said. And I put it up for $49.99. Ended up taking $39.99 for it. However, that one took me about 7 months to sell. I took a best offer of $39.99 plus the shipping and sent that off to Ohio and ended up making about a $30 profit off it. So it works for me, but it's not something I like to do very often. The buyer was very happy with it. So if you look at Decor Fashions, you might find some hats there that might be worth picking up. If I see them, I do pick them up, but you know, I might cut back because, I don't know, mailing a hat that's over a foot across is a real burden, but it depends on if you think it's worth it. Anyway, that's it for now, and in the meantime, yard sale season is coming into full swing. We're going to get into the heat of summer. I hope you find some really cool stuff out there. Oh, and as usual, in July, I will have my Christmas in July spectacular. You all know how much I love Christmas in July. So in the meantime, I'll be posting some videos prior to that one, of course, but I'm looking forward to that one. So hope you find some great stuff out there and good hunting.